Good morning. I'm Louisa Higgins. I'm the Visual and Performing Arts Administrator for Riverside County Office of Education. I'm really excited to have you here today and for the webinar that we're about to present to you. And so I'd like to introduce the team that is here on a Saturday out of service to students and band directors this morning. So we have our moderator and event chairperson, Mrs. Allison Huntsman, and she is the Visual and Performing Arts teacher on special assignment at Val Verde USD, and she did all of the technical pieces and all of what we needed to make Go React to Go. So we're really grateful to her for that. Then we have our festival director, Dr. Gregory X. Whitmore. He is the director of the Pacific Symphony Youth Wind Ensemble and the assistant professor of music at Cal State Fullerton. We also have festival adjudicator, Dr. Ricky Badua. He is the director of bands and associate professor of music at Cal Poly Pomona. And our third guest this morning, festival adjudicator, Dr. Jacob Susteda. He is the assistant conductor of the Pacific Symphony Orchestra, and he's also the music director of the Pacific Symphony Youth Orchestra. And I just want to commend this particular team for really pushing to create a special event during this difficult year that we've been having. So we were all set to do an honor band, and we will be back next year to do an honor band, but we wanted to make something available that was meaningful and special for you this year. And one thing that you should know, so I want you to feel really comfortable about asking questions, because this team is incredibly positive and all about encouraging young musicians. That's why they're here. And just, I had so much pleasure in working with them, the joy that they brought to this work and the joy that we got from watching you. And I'm not a performer. And so for me, the vulnerability it takes to, film yourself and go for it and send it in to us, I commend you, because that was incredible. And no joke, I had like tears of joy watching your videos. So without further ado, we'll get started, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Huntsman. So please go ahead and mute yourself until it's time to raise hands and ask questions, and I'll watch the chat in case you have questions for me. Okay, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited that you're here. So we're going to open up our webinar today by hearing from our three adjudicators, just their overall thoughts from the 2021 RCOE Virtual Instrumental Solo Festival. So I thought we would start with Dr. Greg Whitmore.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is great to see you. Mr. Watts, it's great to see you also. Welcome. Welcome to my colleagues, Dr. Susteda, Dr. Badua, Ms. Higgins, Ms. Huntsman, and all of the students who've joined us today. The first thing I'd like to say is how exciting it was to have this opportunity to continue in some kind of music making this year. We all know what COVID did to our music programs and what that meant for music making, and that we had to sort of go to our separate spaces. And we wanted to find a way to create a space for you to make music and then also receive comments that would allow you to become a better musician. So first, we had how many different videos or submissions did we have, Ms. Huntsman? How many did we get, or Ms. Higgins? It's a big number.
It's around 200.
Yeah, that's terrific. And do we know how many different schools from the county?
Oh my goodness, I'll go grab that report and I'll be back.
Okay, that'd be great. Well, so I'm just really impressed by the number of students who took the opportunity to share their music making. And I was adjudicating principally the flutes and clarinets. And between those two sections, there were about 70 videos that were submitted from middle school level students through high school level students. Some folks were submitting excerpts, others were submitting movements, others were submitting performances like etudes. And what I can say is all of those performances that I had the opportunity to visit with and adjudicate, first and foremost, I came into this process just looking forward to supporting music making. This was not necessarily about right or wrong or better or worse. This was about giving students the chance to make music and allowing myself the opportunity to offer suggestions to make the music making even more musical, but also to celebrate the opportunity to have students play. So I approach this really generously. That's kind of where I'm coming from for the students who may be here with us today. And I really enjoyed the fact that we had such a variety of performances, that we had middle school students who were willing to put themselves in a position to play and offer videos, that we had high school students willing to offer their music making. So I found this whole experience to be very, very heartening and also very, very exciting in the sense that we were allowing students the chance to make music together, in the sense of I can still get better on my instrument, even though I may not be sitting in orchestra or sitting in band. I can still find ways to improve on my instrument music making, and the willingness for students to be vulnerable. Anytime we make music as musicians, we are offering a part of ourselves to the world, right? Anytime you play your instruments, you're offering that, whether it's Christian playing or Jessica playing or Shayna playing, you are offering something of yourselves to the larger world. And that takes a lot of courage. And it's even more courageous to have to make a video and submit it into space and then have these 3 people who you can't see, who you only get to hear from at the end of the process, to offer you comments. And so that's where I'm really excited, is the willingness for people to share. And I know one of the concerns that music educators, band, choir, orchestra across our country and in our region are concerned about is, now that things are beginning to look like schools are going to come back, what's it going to look like? I've been off for a year. My program has been off for a year. We've lost that momentum. We've lost that energy. What's it going to look like? Am I going to have to start all over? And we're even thinking about that with our own groups, with the youth orchestra, with the youth wind ensemble for Pacific Symphony, for the Cal State Symphonic Winds at Fullerton, and I'm sure Dr. Badua and his groups at Cal Poly. And this gave me a lot of hope that things are going to come back and just get right back into things and get right back into music making, just by the students willing to say, you know what? I know this is just going to be an adjudicated thing. I'm going to go ahead and play anyway. I'm that hungry to make and share music. So those are my big takeaways from this. And I really enjoyed the process. And who knows, this might be something that we consider doing for the county in future years, even though things begin to come back and look a bit more like what we're used to. So those are my overarching thoughts from the festival.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So now we'd like to hear thoughts from Dr. Ricky Badua.
Hey, I can't follow my colleague, Dr. Whitmore, as well, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I'm curious to know, since we have a pretty sizable audience, how many of you are band directors here? Sweet. So I'm going to make my comments to you, the teachers in this district, and the private teachers. I was really impressed. There are great teaching going on in Riverside. I've been out there a few times, but what I saw from the individual preparation and what you folks are doing as teachers is outstanding. It makes me want to go say hello more often and help you out, because what you're doing is just fantastic. I had the privilege of adjudicating all the saxophones and the upper brass, trumpets, horns, and trombones. And I was just really impressed. So thank you, band directors, for what you are doing. As a former high school band director myself, it's a lot of work and you're doing fantastic. And I'm just very humbled and impressed. How many students do we have here in the room that submitted? Yeah, I'm impressed with you. I mean, all of you. The thing that really impressed me was how, beyond being prepared, meaning knowing and playing your music well, your stage presence, like all of you were so courteous to introduce yourself. You know, hi, I mean, it's always awkward. You look at a camera and no one's responding. Hi, I'm so-and-so, and hopefully you like my music. And, you know, I really appreciated that, because it added the human element to performing, which is what's missing from this go react virtualness, right? And all of you, the ones that I saw, I'm not literally all of you here, but it really helped a lot, because it showed me a little bit of your soul as a musician and an artist, of who you are, just by saying yourself and your name. So I really appreciated the etiquette and what I call stage presence, right? Because when you're on the stage yourself, you do have to have a little bit of a showmanship, right? Stand with confidence. So even the way your videos were presented were outstanding, and I was really inspired and excited to watch the next video and try to help you as best I can. So again, thank you, music teachers, also the studio teachers and band directors for giving this opportunity for me to learn about your district more. And thank you, students, for being the best selves and for showing me who you are as people, because it really helped in helping you out with your music making journey. So thank all of you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And finally, we'd like to hear thoughts from Dr. Jacob Sesteta.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And I echo everything that you just heard from my colleagues here. I had an amazing time and I was very moved, really inspired by this entire process. Like Dr. Whitmore said, you know, we were searching for a way to keep making music, to keep this thing alive that we've all been working so hard on. You all, for the years that you've put into your instrument training, directors, for everything that you've done. And then all of a sudden, we're all left with this virtual platform and living from our computer screens. And so I just give kudos and bravo to everybody who put this thing together, and for all of you for participating and for being willing to try this. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts to be a musician. And then to be a musician in the virtual platform, I think has another element of, you know, scariness and just, wow, I'm so blown away by everything that you've all done, by your creativity. You know, I heard some amazing concertos, some sonatas, some etudes, some excerpts. Excellent, excellent. I mean, it takes something to put yourself out there and to be willing to record yourself. In a way, I think this is more nerve-wracking than just presenting yourself in a solo setting, because, you know, you play, there's nerves, of course, of getting on stage and having a judge or judges in front of you. But when you record, this thing lasts longer, forever in a way. But that's one of the things I liked the most about it. I was able to watch your performances and then go back, and sometimes go back again and go back again, or even just go back 10 seconds and see the amazing things that you have all done. So I was inspired. I remember showing up to a Pacific Symphony rehearsal after doing some judging, and I just had a huge smile on my face under my mask. But my colleagues could tell, like they asked me, what's going on? What were you just doing? And I shared with them this whole project and everything that we were doing here. And they were inspired by it. In fact, they wanted to know what this platform was, this software, and I shared everything I could about it. So students, thank you. Like from me, thank you for allowing us to be a part of your music making and for trusting us to judge you, to give you some criticisms. What I would say about that is, remember that any critique you got, it's just for us to offer you something to advance yourself, to take your music making to the next level, regardless of what you end up doing with music, whether you keep pursuing it, whether you choose another elective. That music is a part of your life right now is all that we ask, and it will always be a part of your life. So every comment we made, everything we pointed out was only to help you take what you're doing to the next level, to advance yourself. So that's really where we were coming from. And like my colleagues, I was just being as generous as possible. I wanted to offer you all the things that I heard, the things that I saw. But really what I will say from the bottom of my heart is it was very inspiring. It was very moving. I was like, I can't say it enough, but I was blown away by your creativity and your willingness to do this and put yourself out there. It really was enjoyable. I loved sitting here. I would come home usually after symphony rehearsals, and this was like the highlight of my day. Now, don't tell my colleagues I said that at the symphony, but it was so great to see you all performing. I loved that it was more personal in a way than the traditional judging or solo contest, because we got to, you know, kind of be in each other's homes or be in each other's personal space. And for me, I felt like I was offering you all a little glimpse of my life too, because not only did I type some comments, but then I got to talk to you a little bit, or at least record a message to you. And that for me was a wonderful touch that we were able to do that with this software. So I hope you all got something out of this experience. Whether you think you did or not, you absolutely did, because it takes courage and bravery and vulnerability, like some of my colleagues said, to do this thing called being a musician, and especially to record yourself and be a part of this solo festival. So thank you for really brightening our day and for reminding us all what music makes possible for the soul, for the human being. And thank you for what you've done and what you're going to continue to do, directors especially. Thank you for your support of your students in this very trying time, and for being willing to try this online platform. I think it was incredibly special and something, in a way, more than what we would have gotten in a traditional setting. That's the thing I'm most going to take away from this experience, how creative musicians are in general. You know, we could have just said, well, we'll see you when we see you. Keep practicing. But we didn't. There are some amazing people who are committed to music education and just committed to continue to deliver something for you all as students and as directors. And so the result of all this creativity and thoughtfulness and focused intention is what we see and what we've seen in this festival. So every one of you made this possible, and every one of you really is a hero for music and for what we can do as a society inside of this, very difficult and trying time. We did not give up. We kept pushing through, and students, that's because of you. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart for everyone who made this possible. I loved it, and I really had a great time.
Thank you for those beautiful words. So now we're going to transition into some pre-prepared questions that we have for our panelists. We have an opportunity for each of our panelists to answer each question. So the first question we wanted to hear from panelists about is, what thoughts, tips, or advice can you provide for students aspiring to be a whole musician? And students, if you've never really heard that term, whole musician, what we're talking about is whole being a social, emotional, and an academic musician. So either Dr. Whitmore, Dr. Badua, Dr. Sesteta, feel free to get us started.
Sure, I will be more than happy to get us started. And I will say, I love this part of this session that we had today. So when Louisa Higgins brought this idea up and said we want to end with something where all the students can come together, we can offer you even more practical things about ways to be better on your instruments and better musicians, I was really excited about it. So these next 3 questions that we're going to talk about, or 4 questions, are such that we can hopefully have you take some other things away. So to that end, I will offer one more personal thing before I answer. I'm glad we're doing this in Riverside County. I'm sitting here in my house in Anaheim, but I taught for 13 years as director of bands at Cathedral City High School, which is out in Palm Springs Unified. So when I moved here from Michigan 20 years ago, that's the spot I landed, in Riverside County. And I'm excited to be able to come back and help to offer an experience in a place that I spend a lot of time. In terms of the whole musician question, I have 4 things that I think makes or can help to make someone a whole musician. And I'll qualify this by saying, this is not for those going on to be music majors. This is not for those who think they're going to go into college or go be professional. Right now, all of you that I'm seeing on the screen are musicians. You are. You have probably spent more time on your instrument in your life than anything else than you've done. When you think about the years from beginning to middle school through high school, you're going to spend years on this thing, like 8 and maybe 9 years on this instrument, on the instrument that you've started. That's significant when you consider your age and the things you've done for your lifetime. That's pretty cool. And you can do it throughout your life, whether you go on to music or not. So to my answer to this question, what makes a whole musician? I have 4 things that, to me, that I think makes someone a whole musician. First, that you continually develop and refine your artistic skill set completely. That you continually develop and refine your artistic skill set. And I will add one thing, especially for those of us in middle school and high school. It's more than just how fast you can play, how high you can play. Those things are technique, and we need technique. But technique serves the larger artistry. If I'm going to be a chef, and I like cooking, if I'm going to be a chef, I'm going to spend time learning all the chef skills that I need to make great dishes, to execute great recipes. I'm not just going to learn how to chop or how to flambe just to do it. It's going to allow me to take those skills and make me a better musician or a better cook in this instance. So it's the same thing with your technique. And oftentimes, as young musicians, we think, oh, it's a matter of how fast I can play, how high I can play, how hard a piece is. All of those things are important, but just developing technique by itself doesn't necessarily make you a musician. So we want you to develop your technique, refine your whole artistic skill set. And here's what I mean by that. If you're an instrumentalist, how's your singing skills? How are those? If you haven't really been thinking about that, because I play an instrument, I'm a clarinetist. Well, one of the first things that happened when I got to university and college was I had to go take sight singing class and take singing things. And they asked me to sing in classes and in rehearsals. I was like, wait a minute. I didn't think about that in high school. So think about developing your other artistic skills. If you don't necessarily think about those things, jump into that. Also, how are you with music theory? How are you with music history? You don't have to take a class. Right now, you can do this stuff online. There are great YouTube sites where you can get that information and just begin to explore that. What makes the music that you love so much so cool? What things go into it? My second thing is explore and immerse yourself in all of music. So I conduct the Pacific Symphony Youth Wind Ensemble. I conduct the Cal State Fullerton Symphonic Winds. People think that when I'm not necessarily conducting bands that I spend a lot of time in band music. I don't. I spend a lot of time listening to choral music. A lot of time. Specifically, sacred choral music. Palestrina, Josquin. Because for me as a musician, as an instrumentalist who puts air through an instrument to create sound, I like to hear what choirs are doing to shape phrases, to shape text, colors, polyphony, all of that. So I spend a lot of time listening to choral music. I also spend a lot of time listening to jazz. I do spend time listening to wind works, but I don't live in that world all the time. Often it's when I'm exploring, learning new composers, learning new pieces. But principally, if I am not in a rehearsal, it's going to be choral music. It's going to be jazz music. It's going to be orchestral music, but it's not even on big, large symphonies. It's more about, Beethoven trios or piano concertos or Chopin or those kinds of things. So if you've not explored all of music, please explore all of music, including world music. Get outside of the Western music canon that we live in. If you've not explored Eastern music or Middle Eastern music or native music of all its types, get into that because there's some very cool things. So that's the second thing. Number one, develop and refine your whole artistic skill set. 2, explore and immerse yourself in all of music. And 3, adapt and innovate your artistry. And what have we learned in the last year? That just being in large ensembles is not totally music making. I know in school, band, orchestra, and choir, large ensembles principally are what you experience. And because of the pandemic, we had to go to our homes. Well, we lost those large ensembles, but it didn't mean we lost music making. And when you think about it, music making actually started by people playing piano at home for their families, an instrument at home. This idea of the large ensemble, and I'll certainly not speak for my colleague, but Jake will tell you as an orchestral conductor, we didn't get these large symphony orchestras until quite a bit of time. It's still relatively new, this idea of the large symphony orchestra. Same thing with the concert bands. That stuff was not necessarily the way that life started for music making. It was intimate. It was done at home. It was done in the parlor. You played for your family. So how do you innovate your artistry? Well, what are we doing with technology now? If you've not checked out pieces of music for winds and electronics, check it out. Some really cool stuff. So innovate, adapt, play a piece. I just saw a colleague of mine, piece for saxophone and dancer. That's cool. Yeah, like we don't think about those kind of things. Piece for winds with singer, duet for clarinet and vocalist. Adapt, innovate your artistry. And the last thing is believe and move forward boldly in our art. We sometimes think, those musicians who play at the professional level, those are the ones. And they're fantastic, but guess where they started? They started where we all started. They started with hot cross buns. They started with line number 2 in the book, right? And I had a colleague of mine, director of bands at the University of Texas, Jerry Junkin, said at a conducting symposium, he said, we are all in the same business. If you're, for my friend Mr. Watts and Mr. Lozano, you're conductors in the same business as Gustavo Dudamel. Same business. Speak the same language. We just conduct different groups at different stages. For the wind players and violinists who are here, you're in the same business as the New York Phil, the LA Phil, all these great orchestras, Pacific Symphony. We're just at a different point in our journey. So believe that you're part of this and move forward boldly in that. Those are my top 4 things to being a whole musician. And I'll turn over to my colleagues.
I'll chime in. Dr. Whitmore, man, you are Amen, brother. So everything he said, and so I just have two things, and they're more to do with specific things while you're playing, and so I'm gonna go in that direction. There are just two things for the whole musician. One, as a wind player, for those of you that I watched, never underestimate the breath. In three ways. One, the quality of your breath will determine the sound that happens after it. So a lot of performances either did that well or they did not do that well, meaning you're playing a phrase and like, oh, there's like a little breath, but it kind of disrupted the phrase. And so those are like the technical things that get in the way of like an artistic statement or some kind of thing you're doing, right? So you didn't prepare by taking the appropriate breath to make that happen, right? The second part is planning a breath, right? If you're playing Baroque music, especially, there's no place to breathe because a lot of it didn't deal with wind players. They weren't even developed back then. So if you're playing Baroque music, you have to have built-in breath marks and plan it so that there isn't some weird drop off to come back in, right? So planning your breath. And the last thing, the quality of your breath is tone. So if you don't breathe deeply and you go, ah, you're gonna get that sound. If you breathe deeply, do, you're gonna get that sound, right? So that's the one thing. Don't underestimate the breath. That is what's gonna carry you to get every phrase to be beautiful and well supported with the tone for wind players. Number two, for everyone, know what you're playing beyond the notes on the page. So in the upper right corner is a person's name, the composer, right? And they probably have some information beyond the page. So like do some research. Like I call it geek out. Like you should geek out on Haydn or a Mozart. Like they weren't just these famous dudes, but they actually were pretty cool. So learn more about who they were and maybe the style, because a lot of that information is the answer to what you have to play that's not on the page. But you know, some of your music, some of them have no dynamics or maybe very little, but like your band director or your music, hey, you should do this. And you're like, well, why? The why is knowing that, oh, this guy or person was writing this time period and this is how they articulated notes, right? How they played grace notes on the beat, off the beat. And you find it out by just doing a little more geeking out, as they call it, of who is in the upper right corner of your page. And it's super simple. It doesn't take much, but it takes a little bit of effort just so that you're informed in how you're making artistic decisions and using your breath and the quality of the breath to inform that. So that's all I got.
I'll take right up from where you left off, Dr. Badua. Yes. Geek out, it really is, it's fun. I know it may seem like extra work maybe, but the more you know about what you're doing, whether it's music, visual art, philosophy, physics, biology, the more you know, the more you will have fun with what you're doing. So yes, I agree, absolutely. For me, this question of the whole musician is absolutely echoed in everything you've heard so far, and I put it into one point: explore. Never stop exploring your own instrument, yourself as a musician, music and composers, world music, chamber music, opera. Explore. You're an explorer. You're an artist. You are constantly seeking that which has yet to be uncovered, even if it's playing a piece that's hundreds of years old. Because what has yet to be uncovered is the way you produce this, the way you want to say this to the world. So though music has a quality about it that does reflect past times, absolutely, the way we create it and put it out in this world right now has never been done. And that is one of the most amazing things about music. It is like going to a museum in many ways, but it's also so much more because it is a reflection of the past, whether it was hundreds of years ago or a piece written 10 years ago or yesterday. There is a past element, there's a present element, you performing it and studying it, and a future element. As you put it out in the world, it gets into people, it gets into society and humanity, and it changes the way we interact with each other. It alters our perception of people, of places, of humanity. So though it may not seem quite like it has that big of a ripple effect, it does. Everything we heard stayed with us. All the comments we made, all the inspiring sounds we heard, it made a big difference in the three of us as judges. And believe me, that is reflected in our lives ongoingly, in our teaching, in how we approach different interactions that we have in life, in just the simple fact that we have been sharing what we have done here with Riverside County and this solo festival with so many people and students that we interact with daily. And so it continues to roll forward, and it actually gains steam. You know, the analogy, one drop in a pond or in a body of water ripples and grows and grows and grows into a wave and grows into a wave, and it becomes a tsunami, a metaphorical tsunami. But that's the impact that you all have already. You may not see it, and that's one of the things about it. But believe me, you have created a tsunami of inspiration, of influence, of creativity. And sometimes it's kind of daunting to own that. And I encourage you to own that, because that is already who you are and what you've done. So for me, this is being a whole musician is about exploring. Never stop exploring. Also, I would say, knowing the history of music and composers can actually be quite exciting. You know, as I, of course, study composers because I love to geek out. But, you know, like one of the things I found so interesting recently was Mozart, right? We all know Mozart, or we've heard about him. He loved cats, and he used to pretend he was a cat. And when you just think about how silly Mozart's music is and how light and fun and friendly, and then you think of this adult who we hear stories about, you know, he was a character, he loved jokes, but like interacting with his friends and crawling under and around his piano, pretending to be a cat, it changed the way I started to listen to Mozart's music. And I started to hear this like little character, this little devil of a character being like, you know how cats will just look at something and then toss it off the desk? I can hear that in his music, right? Like this kind of wittiness and slyness. So it just opened my ears up and my mind up to what Mozart is. There's also like just interesting stories about so many composers. I heard a lot of Vivaldi concertos from the string players. Excellent. Did you know that Vivaldi was known as the Red Priest? And what does that mean? It's not a dark thing either. At first, when I heard that, I thought, oh no, did he do something bad? No, they called him the Red Priest because he had this amazingly red hair, like really richly red. And that gives like me an image of this guy. Yeah, I don't know exactly what color red, but it was deep red, they say. And maybe that actually will influence the way I play his music. It actually does. Just you having more of an image in your mind of what this person was like, crawling around pretending to be a cat, red, curly, deep red, curly hair, and a priest. The more you know, the more your mind is thinking about the time this piece was written, the composer who wrote it, why they wrote it. This will influence your creativity, your artistry. So the whole musician, for me, the way we develop that is to explore, is to let your mind roam free and gain more. So listen to music, listen to pop, listen to rock, listen to classical, listen to opera, explore chamber music, and by all means, yes, get outside of your area. So string players, you should listen to some wind pieces. You should listen to vocal pieces. Every one of us should be listening to opera, world music. Like really explore what music has to offer, because I'll tell you what, you don't have to work to have music be a part of your life. It's a part of everybody's life all the time. Music is everywhere, always. And music is nature. Music is the sound that the birds make, that crickets make, that the water makes, This is where composers got their influence and their inspiration. So music is always a part of our life. Music is always a part of our life, and it's always around us. So all you have to do is what you've already been doing. Be aware. Awareness. Realize it's in every commercial. It is what takes a movie from beginning to end. It is a part of a sitcom. It is what makes you know that you should laugh here or cry there. Music is always around us, and it tells us how to be human. It shows us the ways to be human. So you've already been doing it. Just let yourself be aware of the depth of it, of how much it's around us, and how much you all already know about music. The more you know, the more you explore, I called it earlier, but the more you know, the more you will tap into your creative artistry and what's already inside. There's nothing I think that you need to become an amazing person. That's already who you are. All you need to do is tap into that resource that's inside of you by exploring more. The more you hear, the variety of types of sounds you let into your soul, the more it will open up what's already there, and you're just going to be amazed. So it will be the thing that takes you into the next level of being an artist, being a musician. Explore, awareness, and it's already always happening. So just let it in.
If I can add one thing, Allison, before we go to the next question, I have a gift for the students and the directors who are here. Now that my colleagues have spoken, just to wrap up this whole musician thing, for me, there are 4 pieces of music that got me through the pandemic that I kept coming back to, that I kept coming back to, that I kept coming back to. And I'm going to put some links in the chat so that everybody can have these links and you can listen to them on your own time. You don't have to do it right now, but I wanted to send these to you. I'm just going to put them in they're YouTube links in the chat for you so you have them. Just to make sure that they all translated. Great, they did. So there you go. These 4 pieces of music were things that got me through the pandemic. I kept coming back to these. That, and I also decided that I was going to learn how to make 4 French dishes over the course of the year. I was going to spend the pandemic learning to make 4 French dishes. And that was the other thing that I wanted to add to being a whole musician. It's being a musician, but it's also being outside of music. What do you do outside of music that feeds your music making? So me spending that time learning how to make coq vin, or learning how to make pot de feu, or learning how to make, you know, any of these other French dishes that I tried to make was great because I got to try it, and we had some failures. There were some that didn't turn out the way they were supposed to, but in the end, I've gotten better at them. We haven't mastered them yet, but that's been a topic for me, and that's been great. So I just wanted to throw that out to you. So you have those. Please feel free to listen to those, to share with your family members. I know, Allison, we have some other questions to get to.
Thank you. What amazing thoughts our panelists shared, you know, about being a whole musician. So much to think about. So the second question that we have for our 3 panelists is, what thoughts, tips, and/or advice can you provide for audition preparation? So this may be auditions for Southern California Honor Band, maybe college auditions, maybe an audition of another type. So feel free, any one of our 3 gentlemen, to take it away.
Is it okay if I start out? This is my 7th year at Cal Poly, and I've done several of listening auditions, honor bands, and things. And there's 2 things. I think 2's a number. I'll keep it simple. 1 is get there early to any audition site. If it's in person, parking, where do you find the building? Your parents need to know where they need to go. And you gotta warm up and get there at least an hour early before your audition time for anything, wherever you go on campus, to a high school or setting. And then warm up and make sure you're ready. Second thing is more musically based. For the most part, all of you that are here, students, band directors, you can play what's usually on the page, but really play what's on the page. Like, it's not sort of mezzo forte, it's mezzo forte. It has to be exactly what's on the page. But what makes an audition for me stand out is what a student performs that's not on the page. And so my colleagues been hinting at the artistry thing. Artistry is what you think about something that's not on the page. You know what I mean? I always talk about phrases need to go someplace and go away from someplace. It's always this arc of going somewhere and going away from somewhere. And when you're doing an audition, beyond playing really well on the page with a great sound and sort of playing dynamics, you've got to go beyond that, because that audition to me will stick out. You got to imagine on our side of it, we hear a lot of auditions in a row. And the ones that stick out are usually, oh, I really love how that oboist phrased it. I want to give that person a scholarship because that was inspiring, et cetera, et cetera. So one, if you're auditioning in person, get there early so that your brain is not, or your parents are not confused of where to be. So you're not frantic walking into your audition room. Number two, play everything exactly on the page, but things that are also not on the page so that you say something artistically. So Dr. Whitmore, feel free to chime in and add on. And
yeah, Dr. Sesteta, that's great,
yeah.
Dr. Badua. Dr. Sesteta, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, Dr. Badua, I love that. I wrote down what you said because I love how succinct it was, and you're right on. I mean, that's it. I'll just go a little bit into what I also think of. For me, what I constantly tell my students, I taught high school. I've been a professor for 5 years before I came here, and I come from Texas, another state that's really, really strong with music education. And having taught high school and as a university professor in Texas, I heard a lot of auditions at various levels. I've been a youth orchestra conductor. I've worked in the professional realm. So I have been a part of auditions in many capacities, summer festivals, youth orchestra, solo festivals like this. And for me, it comes down to a few things. One, music is a language. We've heard this. So say something. Music is a language. So say something. Anything, which kind of echoes what Dr. Badua just said. Say something. Don't just come in and give me black notes on a page. That would be like me taking a novel and telling you what the novel is letter by letter. That is not the novel. T-H-E space B-O-Y space R-U-N space. The boy ran. Already just putting the letters together for 3 words says something. Now, the more I start to connect that and read a paragraph, and then another paragraph, and then a chapter, as opposed to another chapter, this is getting more complex and starting to say something bigger, deeper, wider, with more depth. Music is a language. So as pieces get longer, as the notes get more complicated, or the details in the music you become more aware of them, say something. Now, if it's something that's a little bit, maybe not quite what a composer was intending or what a piece is about, that's okay. As teachers, as judges, we'll help you with that. I would so much rather someone come in and say something, even if it's wild and radical, than not say anything at all, or play safe. This is what I think most young people do, young musicians, because why not? They play safe. I understand that. We all do. It takes a lot to play dangerously. And what I mean by that is to take those notes, to take those rhythms, and show us your personality. This is what I always want in an audition. We will work with you on fixing notes and fixing rhythms, because that's technical. We can work with you on that. What's more difficult to do, especially in an ensemble setting, for instance, is to work with you on showing us your personality, because we have to then put a lot of things together. But technical aspects we can fix. We can work on getting your dynamic contrasts even wider. We can work on getting those intonation things fixed or the rhythmic things solidified. That's part of what we do really well, but it's difficult for us to pull your artistry, or here's a better way, pull your personality out of your playing. This is part of your exploration and your willingness. You have to be willing to let us in. Now, it may be, I'm a shy person by nature. Some of my friends laugh when I tell them that, because they don't experience me that way. But in my human life, outside of being a conductor or a musician, I tend to be quiet. But what I found through my music making is when I pick up my instrument or when I pick up my baton to conduct, that's when I get to show myself to people, my personality, who I am, and I feel safe there. I'd rather do it as a musician than do it with my words or do it in other ways. I feel much more comfortable letting people into my world when I do it through music making. So explore that. Be willing to let us in and show us who you are as a person. Now, this all comes back to some technical things like preparation. Absolutely, you have to know what you're playing. If you're auditioning and you have an excerpt, did you take time to go explore the entire piece? So maybe you're playing 3 lines, 5 lines of a piece of music. Well, now with Spotify and YouTube and all the resources we have, it would take you a few minutes, yes, and this is something that's part of preparation. Go listen to that entire piece, the 20-minute piece, not just the 5 lines. Now, you may find, I don't know exactly where my excerpt is in this 10-minute piece. That's okay. That's okay. The fact that you went and listened to the piece in its entirety with all components, whether it's chamber music, an excerpt, or just a concerto or a sonata, listen to the entire thing. And here's going a step further. Listen to more than one recording. Watch more than one recording. Again, this goes back to my exploration. Explore music. So you have a piece to prepare or 2 pieces of excerpts. Go listen to those pieces. You want to go even further? Take that composer and listen to other pieces of theirs. You want to go even further? Find out who influenced this composer and listen to that music. So you see, it never ends. You are constantly an investigator. So keep investigating music and all of its influences and the way it continues on. It's a lineage. So it will never end. And we as conductors and educators, we know that. So there's never like, okay, I'm going to keep going to get to that end point, because there is no end point. It is life. It's just a process that keeps going and evolving. But the more you uncover, the more you investigate and explore, the more fun you have with it, and including auditions, which we know are nerve-wracking. So every one of us have been through a lot of auditions, and we want you to succeed. So remember that as you enter into auditions, we get how difficult they are. There's no better process, unfortunately, for often what we need to do. We need to hear people in a setting that's fair. And that's, I think, what auditions provide, an equal setting for us to hear people, but we know it's uncomfortable. So a lot of your job is to find ways to be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. And life is full of those. A job interview is, for instance, an audition. So the more you play your pieces, the more you spend time with your instrument, the more you know about music, what you're playing and how it should sound, the more comfortable you will be in an uncomfortable setting. So preparation. My big other thing is professionalism. And what does that mean? So it means a lot of things, but it's simple. It means looking the part. And what do I mean by that? You'll know. So if you're performing for someone, it doesn't matter what you're doing, when you're doing it, where you're doing it. Do you look the way you want to look? Do you look professional? And it's simple. Is your shirt ironed? Is it tucked in? It doesn't have to be, but I'm just giving you some examples. Do you have shoes on? I actually saw an audition with no shoes. It was an amazing solo, and it didn't bother me, but I did make a comment like, I think for this, you should put shoes on, because if we were in person, you probably wouldn't come play for me with no shoes on. It doesn't bother me, it really doesn't, but it's a small detail like that. It's the way you approach it. So when you put your clothes, your nice clothes on, or your recital clothes, or your Sunday best, whatever you want to call it, it's that level of care that will be reflected in what you present to people and in your audition. So, but here's the other thing, like guys, I think especially, sometimes we play our recitals or auditions with a jacket on, we wear our suit or our tuxedo. Well, here, did you practice with that jacket on? because I know for myself, it's a totally different world when I'm wearing a shirt like this, or when I'm wearing a button-up shirt and then I put a jacket or a blazer on top of it. Because now I'm dealing with another level of layers that constricts my movements as opposed to not having that on. This goes back to preparation. So you should take your clothes that you're gonna either play your recital in or your audition in and practice in those a few times, just so you feel, oh, that's different on my back. That's different on my arms. That's different on my lungs, because now I've got everything tucked in and my breathing feels different. So you can never go too far with preparation ever in life. I mean, it would be amazing to say, I spend most of my time preparing. Well, then you're going to be successful like that. So those are the things for me: professionalism, preparation, and those kind of go hand in hand, but take the time to think about what you're going to wear, how you're going to walk in. Here's another big one that I see a lot in auditions. Good afternoon, my name is I'm going to play, and you're talking to the floor and you're mumbling, and just imagine what that perception is in that. We know it's difficult, and we know it's nerve-wracking. So you got to practice introducing yourself, which I loved with our videos. It was an opportunity for you all to do that, and they were great. I even commented on quite a few of them. Thank you for introducing yourself and looking at the camera and speaking up. It's harder to do, I think, in person. You know, you come in, there's usually someone older than you or a few people older than you. You have to practice introducing yourself so that you don't mumble, so that you don't look at the floor, and so that you can say the name of your piece. If you say the composer's name wrong, don't worry about that. We don't care about that. But what we do care about is how you approach this process. And all of it has to be practiced. But this is the same for a job interview. You should wear the clothes that you're going to interview in a few times before and sit down and have someone just ask you a question like, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? What's your name? Because we do weird things when we're nervous. Our mind does weird things. And the same as when you put your instrument to play and you're nervous. So prepare, practice putting yourself into these conditions that make you a little bit uncomfortable or a little bit nervous. One of the things I used to do when I was in my undergrad, I used to get the heartbeat thing, and my hands would shake a little bit and my hands would sweat. So my teacher would have us run the stairs at the university for the first 2-3 floors. Just go up and down. You don't have to run them, but quickly walk up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down to get your heart racing. This is what it feels like when your adrenaline is really pumping and you're about to go play. And then we had to play our softest, slowest piece with our hearts racing and probably a little bit of sweat, or for me, a lot of sweat. And then, so I'm putting myself in the condition of what it might be like when I'm nervous on stage in an audition, playing for people, my slowest, softest piece. Even my fastest, loudest piece is hard, but we created those conditions so that when I did get to that audition, it didn't feel so scary. And I was actually used to some of those things, the adrenaline, the heart rate, the sweat. So I know I put a lot in this answer, but think about those things: preparation, professionalism, music is a language. What do you have to say? Which is another way of saying, who are you as a musician? What's your personality? Let us in. That's all we ever want. And then my very last thing is, remember that we want you to succeed. We are there for you. We want you to have a good audition. We want you to play well. Really, we do. Maybe it doesn't always seem that way from what you see, but people, judges, we want you to have a good audition. We really do. So remember that. We're there for your success. There's no probably better way than an audition for us to hear people, like I said earlier. So it's okay that you're nervous, but we do want you to be successful and to have a good audition. So we're on your side. And also, we know how much bravery it takes. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Whitmore.
Great. So here's what I'll say to Dr. Sesteta's point. And I'll say this to the band directors who are here, or the orchestra teachers who are here, and the students. I've sat through, like my colleagues, lots of auditions, judged lots of bands at festivals. Dr. Badua and I have judged bands together. to the point that Dr. Sesteta just made, and I'll offer this to students, I don't care what the audition is, and to the directors who take their groups to festival, doesn't matter where the festival is or how it's being scored. Please take the time and take the care in your preparation, fine, but don't make the judges out to be the be all end all. A lot of the times it's the judges. What are they going to say? Oh, I can't play this piece because this is the piece, and the judges might not like my interpretation. To what Dr. Sesteta just said, my first thing when I sit down in an audition is I'm looking forward to an 8-minute concert or a 6-minute performance. Or your band's going to play at festival, great. I'm looking forward to having a great concert for the 15 minutes you're going to be on stage. Yeah, we'll be talk about some stuff about how to do this better or how to do that better, but that's not where I'm starting. And I tell my students at Cal State Fullerton, it's like watching ice skating with the sound off. You just see the artistry. You don't hear the judges going, oh, they missed that. Oh, they missed that. Oh, that was turned around wrong. Oh, they didn't do that. So that's where I start. And I know my colleagues start there. So for the conductors who are here, as you prepare for festivals coming back, and for the students who are coming back to auditions, don't make the judges out to be more than they really are. Go in and make music. It's a performance. It's a performance. I don't care if it's juries. And I say this to the students at Fullerton, that jury is not a jury where we're ticking boxes. Give us a performance and everything else will take care of itself. So that's my first thing. I would also say that there's 3 parts to any audition. There's pregame, there's the game, the audition, and there's postgame. Please understand that in most auditions, even though we're not writing things down, the scoring is starting when you walk in the room. It just is. So if the judge says to you, sure, take a minute or two, Jessica's going to come in and have an audition for me. And I say, great, Jessica's nice to meet you. Jessica Contreras is here. She's going to play. Go ahead and play a few notes and warm up in the room just to hear how the room sounds. And she starts to play. I am automatically starting to get a sense as to what that person is going to sound like, what Jessica's going to sound like in her piece. So practice those things. How are you going to warm up in the room versus in the warm-up room when it's just you? What Dr. Sesteta said about being professional, absolutely. Having music copied, having nice music copied, having folders set up, having all that stuff done so you present the best image of yourself before you start to play. Then, of course, there's the actual audition. We're looking for a concert. I'm looking to be moved by your music making. The comment about excerpts, yes, and I said this in some of the videos. If you're going to play the middle movement of the Saint-Saëns Sonata for clarinet, great. Have you listened to it so that we feel you're playing with the orchestra versus even though you're standing by yourself in your bedroom or in your kitchen making that music? And then the third thing is the post-game. How do you end the audition? Do you bow? Do you say thank you? How do you exit? All of those things work. And it doesn't matter if it's an all-Southern audition, if it's an all-state audition, if it is a college audition. But those things in alignment with what my colleagues said, for me, are the big things. Because those are the things. And the adjudicators, what Dr. Sesteta just said, that's it. When I remember going to Solo Ensemble being terrified by these judges. What are they going to say? What are they going to say? No, don't do that. Doesn't matter who they are. You go in and make music and let the adjudicators have that concert, make it a performance. You're going to perform for them. You're not going to audition for them. Changes the paradigm. I'm taking my band to festival. We're going to go perform for SES BOA Festival. Yeah, there's a score sheet, whatever. We're going to start first and foremost with, we're going to have a concert. And it happens to be that this concert requires people up in the audience who are going to be making notes. Fine, we're still going to have a concert. Focus on the music making and less on the adjudication, because that means the preparation and all those things will be there. So those are my comments about this particular aspect. And so we'll get to the next question.
Thank you so much. And what wonderful guidance the 3 of you have provided for students preparing for auditions. So our last question for all 3 panelists is, what thoughts, tips, and/or advice can you provide for those aspiring to be a college music major or simply just taking music classes in college?
Cool. I'll jump in and I'll make sure I let my colleagues, because all of us have taught and are teaching at the university level, so we can certainly speak to this. And what's also, I think, important, students and for the teachers who might be here, is we also have taught in the public school level, so we've seen it from both sides of the music stand. The first thing I would say about aspiring to make music in college is that you can make music in college whether you're a music major or not. You don't have to simply make music as a music major. All of the bands in the Cal States have a non-major band or some ensemble where students who are not principally music majors can come in and play. It's at Pomona, it's at Fullerton, it's around. Most universities have them. You just have to find out about it. And this might be in addition to an athletic band, but there's usually a concert band of some kind and an orchestra of some kind for students to make music, whether they're non-majors or majors. So you find out about that. That's the first thing. But if you are going to go down the road of being a music major, that process to get into the school of music that you would like needs to start pretty much upon the time you make this decision, like sophomore year, that you're going to make this happen. So if you were going to audition for Cal State Fullerton, we would love to have you, but we shouldn't be meeting you for the first time at your audition. Hopefully you have reached out. You have said, hey, I'm interested. Can I come visit? Can I come meet the applied professors? Can I come sit on a rehearsal? Can I come see the school? Can I walk around? Do you have a summer session? Do you have an honor band? Do you have any of those things where I can become known to you before the day you walk in and you do the audition? That should be sort of the closing act of the process if you're thinking about auditioning for schools of music. It's become known. If it's out of state, then you have to do the work out of state. This pandemic has been great in that a lot of professors are doing online lessons to get to know you. So if you're thinking you want to go to Cal State, whatever, UC, whatever, University of whatever, start the process now of researching and considering where the school is, who the teachers are, and reaching out. But what I would also say to anybody who wants to be a quote unquote music major is understand that this is different than playing in band or orchestra or singing in choir in high school. This is your whole life. This is hours in the practice room. There's a lot of alone time as a music major, hours studying theory. Those things, it's not just I come to band third hour and I have a great time. That happens, but that is not the centrality of the experience. It's all of the above. And I think sometimes high school students come into college as music majors thinking that that's what it's going to be like, but actually there's a ton more involved. It is a consuming major. It's time, it's time, it's time. And areas that you may not have thought about: music theory, music history, sight singing, oral theory. If you are thinking about being a music major, please, if you've not had theory in high school, you can start to take some theory. You don't have to be a whiz at it, but if you can get some lessons, or if you can go to a community college where you can take a music fundamentals class, and you can take that and begin to learn some of the things that make music music, that would help you when you get to college. I see a lot of freshmen come in who've never had theory and they struggle because, oh, I just thought it was playing. Well, it is, but it's the other stuff. So we would certainly want you to think about that. And then the other things, if you're going to be a music major, is, and Jake and I have done a session with the Youth Wind Ensemble and Youth Orchestra about this, is what do you want to do when you're done? Do you want to be an orchestra teacher, choir teacher, band teacher at a public school? Okay, great. Do you want to teach, you want to be a professional musician, like play or conduct Pacific Symphony? Great. What does that mean for your life after you finish? It's a competitive business. It's a competitive industry. And I would also say, even for those going into teaching, music education is becoming increasingly competitive. There's typically only one band director, one orchestra director, one choral director at a school. So that is just the nature of knowing kind of what it is that you do if you want to go into being a music major. So I'll leave it to my colleagues, so I'm sure we'll touch on some of the same thought processes that I may have so that we can hear some other voices.
I want to echo all of that. And I want to take that last point that Dr. Whitmore just made. Music is becoming increasingly competitive. But what I will also add to that is, so is every other profession now. It was a little different when I was studying. I had always heard that music is a tough profession to get into and be successful at because there's a lot of good musicians and not as many jobs as there are good musicians. So I knew that going in when I was studying. But now, especially, I'm new to California this year or last year. I come from Texas. That's a big oil gas state, right? That's primarily what was going on in Houston, where I was coming from. And in the last 10 years, so many of my friends in that business that until about 10 years ago was the business that you could just get into and make a lot of money really quickly for your entire life. And you didn't need that much education, an undergraduate degree, and you were set for life. And now in the last 10 years and ongoingly, people are being let go, jobs are disappearing, and these highly qualified individuals who've been working in this field, lawyers and doctors, can't find jobs. I don't mean to scare anybody either. I'm just trying to say, right now, you as young people are about to enter into an amazing world, and it's a competitive world. And if music is your calling, by all means, come into this field. But like every other field, you're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to get into the nitty gritty. And college is about that. So everything Dr. Whitmore said is correct. If you haven't had some music classes other than your instrument and ensemble, like theory particularly, if you can get ahead in any capacity, please, please do it. It's going to make your experience in college so much better. I went to undergrad having not really ever sung ever in church choir. I was an instrumentalist. This was difficult for me because everyone has to take sight singing because it's essential to your music making. I was terrified of it. I didn't know even how to match pitch in front of people because I was so petrified. I could sing on my own with my CD player in the shower, of course, and I could match pitch. But all of a sudden, when I had to do it in front of my classmates who just seemed to sail through, I was a mess. I was a disaster. And it took a lot of work for me to just stay at the average level. But as an instrumentalist, I was just succeeding like crazy. So the whole musician, the first question we talked about was, for me, was very not there. It was inadequate. I had to find a way to balance my scales. So don't worry about the things you do well, because you do them well. Try to start bringing strength to those other areas where you don't do things well, or where you just have a lack, like music theory, for instance, for all of us is something we could get more into and at a sooner stage. So college level music is exciting, but it is like studying anything that you want to be good at. There will be parts of it that you didn't even know existed. There will be aspects of studying it that are incredibly difficult. And this is exciting. Like, you should know these things about your field. It seems like fine arts, creative arts is all about, well, I got to go practice. I got to play in an ensemble, and I just got to get really good at auditioning. Okay, sure, absolutely. But there's so much more. If you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, a scientist, a mathematician, a player, a teacher, there is a depth of knowledge that you're going to be exposed to that might be daunting, that you might go, what? That all that is involved for me to become a music major, or for me to just study music as a minor? Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully it thrills you, actually, to know the depth and the level of professionalism and expertise that we're going to provide for you and expect you to be a part of, if this is something you want to do. Now, if you want it to just be a part of your life, there's also an avenue for that. So like Dr. Whitmore said, all you have to do is some investigating. It may not be presented to you like the on-campus non-major orchestra or band, but it's out there. So just do some investigating and asking around. Send an email to the wind ensemble professor, to the orchestra director. It may take them a few days to get back to you, but they'll get back to you and they will guide you. Or just contact the office for the School of Music or the register. I mean, ask someone wherever you are if there is an avenue for you to continue doing what you're doing. If you're a violinist, write to the violin professor and just say, I'm a non-major. I'm studying actually, criminal justice, but I've played. And I don't know, do you take students? If they don't, they will guide you. I actually don't take students, but I have a graduate student or a doctoral student who would love to work with you. Why don't you come in? And so just never stop asking questions. Always be okay asking people for different ways for you to be who you are. And if you are going to commit to being a musician, whether as a major, a minor, or just to have it in your life, know that there are levels and aspects of music that will require some work, because this isn't just about having fun. We do all of this work so that it looks natural, so that it looks like we're having fun, because we are having fun. But to get to that point is to do all the background work that is necessary to become this complete whole musician. So whatever role music plays in your life, there is another world, another side of it that I invite you to participate in. Don't be scared by it or don't be turned off by it. Theory will open your ears in a way you had no idea. It will give you a knowledge of how music is made. Music is a language, and we all have to take English classes. We all have to write essays. We all have to read a lot of writings so that you know the language you speak. Same goes with music. The more you know about the syntax, the more you will understand it and then be able to convey it. So it may be frustrating, or you may just not like parts of it. That's okay. Life is full of those things. But be willing to be a student forever, to be a learner forever. This will make your life just that much more enjoyable, and it'll make music being a part of your life that much more fulfilling.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So now we have about 15. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Question?
No, both of your answers took my breath away. I have nothing more to say.
Sorry about that. So with about 15 minutes left, we wanted to open this up for students to ask questions to our panelists. Students, you have a couple of options. This is a nice, small, intimate group. You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question out loud. But if you don't feel comfortable asking your question out loud, I also do have a Padlet, and I will plug a link to that in the chat. So you're welcome to log it on the Padlet, and I will ask it for you. Otherwise, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Same for our colleagues who are teachers, music educators. We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions also, please feel free to ask. We'd love to make this a conversation.
Absolutely.
I actually have a question for Dr. Whitmore. You spoke about your studying and your interest in vocal music, choral music. And I know, so I'm a string player, but a conductor. And I hear a lot of wind, brass, percussion auditions and playing, as well as string playing. But I love this idea, this thing that you were talking about of how you are influenced and how you study just when you listen to vocal music and choral music, the breath. Can you just say a little bit more about what you hear in these recordings and how you translate that into your field?
Yep. So it's a great question. And for the students and for the conductors, as a wind player, I'm always trying to get to the source of the phrase. I'm very phrase oriented. And I think nobody phrases as well as choirs. And I know, Ms. Huntsman, you were a choral director, so you're probably going to second that. So for me, what I'm listening for, Dr. Sesteta, is I'm listening for the way that a choir shapes individual notes. A singer can take one note and add shape and add depth and add direction. I'm also listening to colors. And I'm listening to within chords, what parts of chords are being emphasized. How are the voices blending? So when I'm in front of an ensemble, those things are things that I'm thinking about. But principally for me is how do they initiate sound? Dr. Badua talked about the breath. Absolutely. The breath being the sound before the sound. But for me as a musician, I'm also thinking, how are they shaping that line? How are they taking that one note and taking it to this place? Choirs being so text driven, how are they getting what word in the sentence is being given the emphasis? How can we do that with winds? What part of the phrase are we going to? And how do we get to that place? And then how do we come off of that place? So those are some of the things I'm listening for and try to apply with my own groups.
Awesome. So I have some questions already logged on the Padlet, so I'll go ahead and voice those for our three panelists. So the first question is, how can we find new auditions? Let me rephrase just a little bit. Where might I find information, like online about places to audition at and more information such as location, time, what I need to do in order to secure an audition?
Great. Do we have a name for the person that asked the question? I just want to try to see.
No, I kept this anonymous.
Okay, no worries. So for the person who asked, great question, and I'll try to keep these brief so that we can get to all the questions. I would say the first thing is you can always start with the All Southern, the SCSBOA website. You can start with the CASMIC website, the California All-State website. Shameless plug for Dr. Sesteta and I. We both conduct the Pacific Symphony Youth Ensembles. They are going to we are in the midst of opening. Auditions are open now. If you go to pacificsymphony.org and you go to education, you can click on the link and you'll see the audition information for that. So that's one way. And then the other thing would just be maybe a Google search, Southern California honor bands or honor orchestras or Southern California honor ensembles or those kinds of things. Individual universities and colleges have honor groups. So it might just take some time, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues who may have some other answers to help get that information out.
2, website, and the information is not on the website, send an email to someone on the website that can answer your question as far as signing up for auditions. That's it.
And for me, it would be what they said, and ask teachers, talk to your directors. The directors are connected. It's a small music world. So it can be a little, what if I don't even know about honor band or honor orchestra? Or there's a lot of things I don't even know are out there. Ask directors. Let them know your interest. They'll ask around to their friends, to us, and if we don't know, we will ask around as well. So all we need to know is your interest. Your private teachers, your school directors, and everybody in between, just ask, is there anything this summer? I'm looking for a 1 week, or I don't know, what do you recommend? I'd like to keep playing. I'd like to keep doing this thing. Just let people know you're interested and that you're curious. Believe me, if the moment we know there's curiosity, we will funnel information in your direction. We just need to know that you're not getting the information or that you just want more. So speak up.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I have a few more questions on Padlet, so I will go ahead and voice those. So a question from our student attendee, Vasti. What are ways to keep moving forward and being motivated when you have doubt in your practice?
That's great. And again, I'll try to keep these as brief as I can so we can have everybody talk and get to the questions. First, there was a great thing in the chat. Thank you, Mr. Watts. ArrowBear is open for summer sessions. So those who might be thinking about ArrowBear, great place to go, not too far away. But getting to the moments of doubt. First, we've all had them. So this is not unique to you in terms of having them. And at that point, when you have those moments of doubt, remember what it is that you love about music. Oftentimes we lose that as we get further and further into studying and trying to get better and improve. And also try to stay connected with music in a way that isn't necessarily about your instrument on a daily basis. So Bill Ravelli, the great Michigan band director, used to say, take a musical bath every day. Take a musical bath every day. So spend every day, listen to a piece of music and just listen to it. Don't listen to it for an assignment. Don't listen to it because it's the piece you're playing. Just stay connected with music in that way. Then apply that. That's just reinforcing the love of music making and why we do what we do. Then when you do have those moments of doubt, remember, we've all had them. And that's the time when you have to slow everything down and maybe not try to accomplish as much, but keep moving. So, hey, I'm really not getting this new note on the instrument. Or I can't get that pitch to be played that I'm trying to learn. Or I'm just struggling with a phrase. That might be a point in time where maybe you try to A, take a break from it, and then B, find a way to practice it in a unique way. Talk to colleagues, talk to friends, see if they can help you, okay? But I'll turn it over to my colleagues as well to see what they have to say.
I think you answered that perfectly. Let's go on to the next question.
Perfect.
Cool.
Okay, so our next question is actually focused on vocal music. So our three panelists, you're welcome to answer this. I can provide a couple of thoughts once you're done as well, having been a vocal major and a choral director for, gosh, 8 years. So what if we want to continue music, but not instrumental music, instead vocal music? And then what tips can you provide for me on how to improve my singing skills?
Ms. Huntsman, you're the singer. You're the expert here. So why don't you take the question?
Okay, so in the first part of the question, some good universities for vocal music and choral music. My alma mater is UCLA, so I'm always going to plug my alma mater. I had a great undergraduate experience studying choral music education there. In Southern California, other great local university options, RCC is actually a great place to go and get a vocal music education. They have an outstanding chamber choir that just always wows. Also, Cal State Long Beach has a great program as well, but I really have nothing but great things to say about the vocal music education provided all throughout Southern California. So there's just fantastic options. And then as far as tips on improving, honestly, just the more feedback that you can get from instructors, and like the panelists have already said, one of the upsides to the pandemic is this increased use of a virtual environment for lessons and for feedback. So, you know, if you are in choir at your high school, definitely any opportunity that you have to gain feedback from your choral instructor, feedback from your fellow peers, you know, how you sound to yourself is going to sound different to others, and getting feedback or advice from another pair of ears is just always the best way forward, for sure. So do you guys have anything to add to that one?
Nope, you're the expert. So there were some great things in the chat, so there, you know, check those things out too.
Awesome. Okay, so another question about performing arts universities. What colleges or universities would you recommend for wanting to become a musician in a pit orchestra, such as for Broadway? And this question is submitted by our attendee, Avelina.
Okay. That's a great question, Avelina. Thank you for that question. I would think that any school of music that you could attend, whether at the 2 or 4 year level, will help you to be able to be successful in that endeavor. That's not something you specifically major in. You don't sort of major in Broadway music playing. Typically, you're a music major, and those opportunities to play in those pit orchestras, either here in LA or in any city that has musical theater or music happening in a theatrical setting, is another opportunity for you to get in and make some music in that way. So I would suggest, if that's something you'd like to do, terrific. Just any school of music that you go to is going to help you to develop the skills that you need to be successful in that setting, because it's such a unique way to make music. And so I'll turn it over to Dr. Sesteta and Ricky for that.
I would say, yeah, the same. Just go be a good musician. Go be the greatest musician you could be as a player and as a whole musician. This will get you access to auditioning and hopefully winning a spot in one of those ensembles. Also, if you know of a player already in a pit orchestra or ensemble, you might want to go talk to them and ask, do you teach at a college? So also doing a little bit of research to find out if there is a player, a studio player or a pit player that you are interested in studying with. Look and see if they teach somewhere, or look at the schools of music to see what the professors are doing there. So if you find that some of them are studio musicians in the LA area, well, this would be a great resource for you. So doing a little bit of background work as well would help you. Also just look and see out of schools of music, where did their students tend to end up? So you can kind of see this school is really focused on creating music educators. This school is half and half with performers and educators. So look to see where their students end up, what their trajectory is. This will also help guide you. But first and foremost, it doesn't matter. Go be a great musician and your pathways will open up.
Avelina, what is your instrument?
I play percussion. So
Percussion.
like
So when you
general range.
percussion, so there's a slight lag, but what I can say, once you go to college to study music, pit orchestra playing its percussion, you got to play drum set and play drum set in various styles. So it's not so much the school that you go to, it's what you're learning. So as a percussionist, learn all the orchestral instruments, but also sit on a drum set, learn how to play in a jazz combo, because those skills, you're actually the conductor of the orchestra, believe it or not. So that's what I recommend. Get some really good drum set teacher and master all the percussion instruments. And you can do that at any university music program.
Right. Well, I believe we are out of time at this point, that we're almost at 2 o'clock, but I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for attending, both band directors and students. I want to thank the team. She isn't here. My assistant, Jessica Moyers, is the one who produced over 200 certificates and patches and mailed them out. So she is our hero on that project. But there's a lot of time, love, and expertise to create today's event as well as the festival. So thank you to our festival chairperson and also panelists, unexpectedly, Mrs. Allison Huntsman, our festival director, Dr. Gregory X. Whitmore. Thank you for not giving up on some sort of honor band and musical event this year. Our festival adjudicators, Dr. Ricky Badua and Dr. Jacob Susteda. This is hopefully, we plan on this being the same team that offers honor band next year because we learned so much together. So if this was a great experience for you, please tell your friends. Band directors, please tell other band directors what you experienced and recommend it so we can continue to grow. We learned from GoReact that turned out to be a really interesting technology, and we plan to use that next year for auditions. So instead of holding 2 different auditions and making people drive in, we'd like to handle it that way. So again, that's a silver lining, something we learned this year. I see a couple, I guess everybody's email in the chat. So if you had a question, we ran out of time and you didn't get it answered, the adjudicators are inviting you to email them to find out more. And finally, this webinar, it'll take a couple weeks for it to be closed captioned. And then if you type in RCOE and then a space and then VAPA, V-A-P-A, and go to the arts webinar page, you will find it there. So it's going to take me about 2 weeks, but it will be there if there's something you want to go back and review. So with that, we're signing off. Thanks everybody for your time. It was a pleasure to meet you and listen in on this great event. Thanks everybody.